There'll be a reading very quickly before Sharon speaks. It's If There Is to Be Peace by Lao Tzu. If there is to be peace in the world, there must be peace in the nations. If there is peace in the nations, there must be peace in the cities. If there is peace in the cities, there must be peace between neighbors. If there is to be peace between neighbors, there must be peace at home. If there is to be peace at home, there must be peace in the heart. We welcome Sharon Peterson to the pulpit this morning.
Thank you, Grace.
Yeah.
I was asked to talk during the season of nonviolence with that topic, and also the topic of the month is possibilities or opportunities. So I hope this addresses us some. It was kind of fun to think about. First, I'll start with some words from Holly Near, a singer. Why do we kill people who are killing people to show that killing people is wrong? Such a foolish notion that war is called devotion, when the greatest warriors are the ones who stand for peace. So this is on becoming a peace warrior. I want to talk to you about undertaking a personal quest for peace in human interactions, because paraphrasing the reading that Gretchen just did, if there's to be peace in the cities, there must be peace between neighbors and at home and in our hearts. Also, Thich Nhat Hanh said, if you can take one peaceful step, then peace is possible. Each encounter with every person we meet constitutes a relationship, from family member or chance meeting on the street, employer, employee, old friend, the clerk in the store. Each encounter is an opportunity to choose how we are going to relate to another person. Life offers us constant opportunities for working out the areas of growth necessary for our own transformation and evolution in these relationships. There's a Dr. Gerald Jampolsky and Diane Cirincione, I hope I got her name right, and their husband and wife, by the way. They talk a lot about relationship dynamics in a book Mindy really loves, Change Your Mind, Change Your Life. And I think one or both of them also wrote, Love is Letting Go of Fear. They note that we often find in our relationships an opportunity to experience justified anger, blaming, and pointing the finger of guilt toward others, rather than seeing in our relationships an opportunity to experience love. When we are feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, and tense, it's really easy to project our own feelings onto others, believing they're the cause of the horrible things that we are experiencing and feeling. We hide our real feelings and believe the illusion that what we think and feel is caused by people and events outside us, and we are helpless victims. When we think he or she made me feel angry, sad, defensive, we need to own it instead and just say, I feel angry, I feel sad, I feel defensive, and so on. So this morning on the way to Cracker Barrel, I'm thinking, I feel resentful. But even that, I thought, would be throwing a dagger, so I didn't say it. We worked it out by a compromise. Thank you, Gretchen, for the first part of this service. Perhaps we find people bug us because they remind us of a person from our past whom we've got some unfinished business with. So said Diane, the author I was talking about, when she and her husband dealt with someone they called Richard, an extremely chauvinistic and domineering man. Husband Jerry saw him as fearful and defensive, and so he responded with being honest, loving, and compassionate in return. But Richard reminded Diane of her father, and she felt almost violent and very angry toward him. What she realized is that she had unfinished business with her father and was angry at herself for allowing her father to dominate and control her while she was a child when she was really unable to stand up to him. Letting go of blame and judgment, she was able to become clear, caring, and even compassionate toward Richard. It's often said that when something bugs us about another person, we should hold up a mirror because that thing, or maybe it's even the opposite thing, is bugging us about ourselves. And in Diane's case, it was feeling like she didn't stand up to her father enough. But I want to note that as a feminist, I'm not saying just ignore and not challenge sexist or violent behavior toward women. We've got to call it out, but recognize too when it bothers us more because of the tapes that we have in our heads that are playing from childhood, for instance. I think of myself as a pretty peaceful person, and I really like to teach cooperative games to children and peaceful habits like the Golden Rule when I was the RE coordinator here some years ago. Still, I managed to screw up at least 2 very crucial conversations during those years here in church. One is when I felt fault with someone who was jokingly threatening to beat up his girlfriend. I didn't care for that very much, but my response was yelling at him so loud that that was unacceptable, that he ran in fear, that instant from the church. And I pushed him away, and he felt very unwelcome. And I tried to make amends with that, and people put me in my place, so thankfully, hopefully we moved on from that. Another time was when I felt someone was being too loud at the beginning of the church service, and there was a guest speaker, so I was introducing them or something, but I felt like, oh, that person, basically I shushed them. So I not only shushed them, but I shamed them. I shamed them into embarrassment and humiliation and anger, not knowing what was going on, kind of, because they didn't realize what was what that was triggering for me. The trouble with this approach, though, was my reaction of anger or even fear, perhaps because I was out of control. I felt out of control of that situation, the other person's behavior in that case. So I sought to control it by bullying or being domineering myself. And I think this is often the root of many isms for people, being afraid of the other or what that other person they've been taught represents, and the feeling out of control of another person's behavior. Here's another brief story that the authors told in the book, one of an African-American woman who is a social worker. She said that for many years she was a political activist, fighting against social injustice through protests, marches, and even legal court actions. One day she decided that there was enough hate and anger in the world, and she was not going to perpetuate it. As an African American, she decided to see others who seemed to be attacking her as fearful. After that, she and her daughter stopped at a Chinese takeout restaurant in a neighborhood she hadn't been in before. She got lousy service to the point where other people who came in later were getting served before her. And the person at the counter was just ignoring her question when she was asking what happened to her order, just walking away from her. Finally, when questioned, the counter lady said, "We don't serve your kind." And this was not in the 1950s. This was probably in the late 1970s. Well, in the past, that would have been enough for her to fly in a rage and threaten to sue them. This time, seeing the person as acting out of fear, she said, maybe that's the policy here, or maybe you've had a bad experience with someone in the past. But I just want to remind you that I didn't do anything to hurt you. She started to leave with her daughter when the gentle voice called out, "Please come back. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I'll serve you." Now again, I want to say, I think there's a place for protests and definitely lawsuits. But I was also very struck by this woman's approach to the nonviolent education she wanted to do with people. So during this season of nonviolence, we have the opportunity to look at our ways of interacting with others and perhaps turning over a new leaf. A while ago, I got an opportunity to be a volunteer trainer on implicit bias. And it's the kind of bias that people don't overtly recognize that they have, but might have been ingrained from childhood and be very hard to change. It's often our early life experiences, the media, news programming, and other things like that that are cited as causes for implicit bias. I wanted more purpose on my job, which I admit is a little tame and even boring sometimes now, compared to what I had been used to saving the world at my nonprofit workplaces. And I felt that with my dedication and to anti-racism and other isms, my experience with presentations and trainings, I was a natural for this. There was a test though. I had to try out for the role with a 5-minute presentation on a subject of my choice. So I prepared one on communication tips for speaking with people with disabilities, which is a subject I'm very familiar with for my recent past work experience. I was surprised by how nervous I was. Maybe just the stakes were high for me. Perhaps I didn't know very well the people that I was going to be speaking to, and they were human resources people, so they can put you on edge sometimes. So when I was notified later that I was not selected to be a trainer, I was stunned. And I went to anger and hurt so easily. The sour grapes approach, I decided this must have been a popularity contest or something. And I also beat myself up a little, feeling that I should have approached the presentation differently. I should have dressed differently. I replied to an email when she said, you weren't chosen, that I was very looking forward to participating in the training, and that's because everybody will be taking it in my workplace. I'd appreciate feedback about my presentation, to which the HR director said, "Thank you." And that's it. No feedback, nothing. But I realize now that I can only offer my services, and if someone doesn't avail themselves of them, that's beyond my control. I don't need to hang on to resentments and second-guess others' decisions over which I have no control. I'm learning so much at my new job, but I'm especially learning not to react so defensively when others do something that isn't what my choice would have been, or they do have suggestions or constructive criticism for me. I'm new, so that's going to happen. Peace of mind is a matter of recognizing our connection with the love that joins all life. It is experienced by sharing it with others. Our egos want us to see value in attacking others, placing guilt, blame, fear, judgment, attacking. We cannot give peace to the world until we experience it within ourselves. And we can't experience that inner peace until we have healed our unfinished business and let go of our grievances through forgiveness. We have to believe it's possible, and our thoughts will create our reality. The more peaceful and joyful thoughts we have, the more these seeds are multiplied and manifested in the world. So there's another gatha, they call it, a verse to recite to encourage mindfulness, etc., that Thich Nhat Hanh says, that is, breathing in, I know that anger makes me ugly. Breathing out, I do not want to be contorted by anger. Breathing in, I know I must take care of myself. Breathing out, I know loving kindness is the only answer. And Thich Nhat Hanh recommends that we smile as we recite the last line of the gatha. Breathing out, I know loving kindness is the only answer. This smile relaxes the face, and when we are smiling, we can know that our anger has been transformed into understanding and forgiveness. Sometimes we throw up blocks to this because it's an intimacy, but taking responsibility for our own thoughts and not blaming others for what has happened in the relationship frees us up to forgive and love them, even if they are difficult. If we perceive them as attacking us, we need to see them as fearful and maybe giving a call of help for love. Finally, to share peace, we need to be open to listening to others, and that's an especial challenge of mine. Whether it's their pain, hurt, anger, love, or their own peace that they need to share. I opened a magazine at the checkout lane a few weeks ago, intrigued by the headline that said, "Be a superhero." It wasn't saying to eat spinach so you can leap tall buildings, or, I'm kind of messing up those things, but, anything. But instead, it said to give time, give money, or a listening ear to a friend who needs help. And that's how you can be a superhero, or even a peace warrior. So I have a friend whose husband is facing a life-threatening illness. She needs all the support she can get, and I'm going to try to invite her to church here in case that would help her feel better. Though I'm going to be as supportive as possible, I also told her, and it's good to set your limits to what's realistic, I don't know how much help I can be to her, while I'm also the primary caretaker of my spouse with disabilities. But at least I can listen. And I'm thinking of asking her if she'd take a break and go out with me for tea or a movie, so we can just have some time where I can truly listen to what she's feeling and how she's feeling. I also am hoping to maybe start a caregiver support group for after hours for the people who are working during the day. There's some during the day, but those are usually for people who are retired. Here are 10 affirmations I really like that the authors of Change Your Mind, Change Your Life provide at the end of their chapter on loving relationships. Number 1, I choose to heal my relationship with myself by letting go of all self-condemnation. That's so important for people like me who are often self-critical. A friend of mine was sure she was going to lose her medical license for an accidental HIPAA violation she recognized. She worried about it all weekend and with dread with Monday coming up. She disclosed it at work on Monday, only to be forgiven by her supervisor. It really wasn't as big of a deal as she had blown it up to be. Such needless worry. Number 2, I choose to join with others instead of separating myself from them by letting go of my judgments of them. Number 3, I choose to tear up all the scripts that I have for the way I think people should be in my life. Number 4, I choose to remember that it is not how much I do or say that ultimately counts in my relationships, but how much love I do or say it with. Number 5, the words I choose in my communications always determine whether my intentions are for joining or for separating. Number 6, it is ultimately through my relationships that I will experience unconditional love. Number 7, today I choose to remember that I deserve the right to be happy. Number 8, today I choose to give up feeling like a victim of my relationships, and I will take responsibility for my life. Number 9, whenever I get caught in the past or the future, I will choose to remember that love can only be experienced in the present. And number 10, I can choose love instead of fear in all of my relationships. So thank you for your time, our time together today. It's been a joy. And if we have a little time, I know we're going to maybe go to a song soon, but how about those of you who remember Let There Be Peace on Earth? Sing that with me. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.